The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, I'll sit up here. Doing a one monitor thing today, so it's kind of interesting. Okay, so today we're going to cover something a little bit more unusual, at least for people who come to my webinars, and I'm going to try to go through the product like you've never seen it before or you're thinking about buying it. That came up a couple different times in the past month, and so I thought I would just kind of start from scratch and kind of introduce you to the product and then kind of talk at the end about what your next steps could be, and then hopefully leave a bunch of time at the end for everybody to ask questions. Does that sound good? So my name is Mitch Milo. I am a Dynamics 365 specialist. You can find me at xruncoaches.com, on Twitter, on my YouTube channel, or on LinkedIn. All of my webinars are recorded and put on my YouTube channel. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, you'll get notifications automatically if you set it to do so. And so I do try to follow up all my webinars with an email with a link to it. What I think I'm going to next is I'm going to try to start sending out an email on Monday morning with kind of a summary of the things that happened in the previous week, including the webinars, recordings, any webinars, and things like that. So a little bit of housekeeping. Everybody is muted. And if you want to speak, just you can, if you have a question, you can ask a question in the question box or just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. So if you have anything like that, if you want to talk about, we can do that later. So version 9 became available in the first week of October. And so what we're going to be talking about today is mostly the version 9 stuff. So let's get into an overview of this. So here is the entire Dynamics 365 family. So as you can see, we have sales, customer service, field service, marketing, project service automation, finance and operations, talent, and retail. So this makes up the entire family of products that make up the platform. This is surrounded by Office 365 and by Power Apps, Flow, and the Common Data Service to allow us to connect to other things. Over on the right-hand side, you'll notice you have Cortana Intelligence, Power BI, and Azure Internet of Things. And then finally, when you need to access solutions from third parties, we have the App Source. So let's talk about licensing, because we kind of have to put that up there first, strictly so that you kind of have an idea of what is available in the different types of packages. That does come with one caveat. Don't ask me any questions about licensing. And here's why. It changes enough to where you really have to, every time you have a question on licensing, you need to go to the licensing guide and see what it says. So if you've got any questions, contact Microsoft. I'm not a magician. I can't read minds. And so I just don't want to deal with it, to be quite honest. It can be very confusing. Every piece of licensing will be 100% dependent on your organization. So the bigger you are, the better discounts you get and all the stuff that goes with it. So ask your Microsoft person. That's the best thing to do if you have one. So anyway, sorry to be kind of abrupt on that, but that's just the way it is, because I get questions all the time. Well, how do we do this? Like, I don't know. And I go to the same place you guys do, then I have to figure it out. So just go to the licensing page. It's got a lot of information. The licensing guide is a PDF you download that's about 30 pages long and has everything you need to know about how to actually purchase the product. So here are the big buckets that we have. So we have the 365 plan, we have unified operations, we have customer engagement, and finally we have some special offers and a la carte applications, as you might say. So with the plan, what we have is all of the above. Okay, so this has pretty much everything in it. So finance and operations, retail, talent, sales, customer service, project service automation, field service, and social engagement, and gives us access to Power Apps. There are a couple different variations of this. Now, the other prices for the main license were on the other page. But then you can add team member licenses, and this is important to us because we don't always have to have a full-blown license for a specific type of people. So this is new to Dynamics 365. Previous to this, we have what we call a basic license, and this is kind of the successor to that. And in the licensing guide, you'll actually have there's a table that shows you what exactly you get access to. So it's the common data that is used by most people, like accounts and contacts, things like that. and other variations of that depending on which modules you want to use. And so the idea here is if you have users with specific set functionality, you can get them a team member license in many cases instead of spending a full license for things that they don't use. So that's really the key there. Unified Operations is pretty much our accounting system. So this is what we would call AX, or Microsoft AX. So Microsoft Dynamics 365 Operations is the accounting part. Then they have a retail solution for those running storefronts. And then finally, this year, they introduced a talent module that provides us with what they call human resource or human capital management, or HCM. So if you're getting into that, it won't be something you want to look at. And again, the prices are going to be kind of variant based on the different pieces that you use. So the customer engagement plan, this is pretty much the CRM that we've always known and loved with some extra stuff thrown onto it. So they've separated out sales and customer service into different buckets that you can purchase independently or together. Then we have project service automation, field service, and social engagement, and again, the Power Apps. And again, we have the standard license, and then we have a team member license depending on what you want to do with it. And then finally, we have special offers. So the other three things were packages of things. Well, what if you don't need a package? You just need one thing. So like you only do sales, or you only do customer service or field service or project service automation. You can buy those things individually, is the idea. But if you look at the pricing for these individual items versus what the other pieces are, you'll notice that by the time you buy two of these, you could have actually bought the bundle for cheaper. That's the idea, okay? So let's take a quick look at the modules that we have as sales. So within the customer engagement, again, this is the standard CRM stuff that we have. So sales is, so basically, kind of back up for a second. The basics of CRM includes accounts and contacts. So we have all of that. So that's included in all of these modules. Then on top of that, we have sales-related things such as opportunities and leads, quotes, invoices, things like that. That's built into the sales module. Customer service is cases and things related to cases. So when you're doing cases and SLAs and entitlements and things like that, that is the customer service portion of that. Project Service Automation is a project management system that's built into Dynamics 365 as an add-on module, and it will actually work with the other modules and the other data within the system. Field Service is for people or companies who actually have people they send on site. It's like, for instance, people who install your cable box, or they come into your security system, or whatever it might be. That's a field service thing where you're physically sending somebody on site to do a job, and you want to provide them access to the system and to the data that they use. So again, these are all independent modules. They're all related. So for instance, if you install field service and project service automation together in the same org, you'll notice that they share some of the same data. And that's the idea behind all of these things, is they're actually sharing data, so we don't have duplication and we don't have silos. That's the kind of general premise behind all this, is all of our data is in one place, and we can use it with a minimum of fuss and effort. Again, going back to the operations side, so this is the accounting. So we have finance and operations as your typical accounting or AX thing. And then we have the ability to run a retail store. So that's new-ish. And then new is talent. So again, human capital management is something that they have been working on. And I think that was just separated out from the accounting part, and then just created its own module from there. So if any of these are interest to you, this is the path you would go down. And then finally, we have a couple special ones. So Microsoft Social Engagement is an application that they bought, I think it was called NetBreeze back in the day. So they purchased this a few years ago, and it's been through a couple different names. This ended up as Microsoft Social Engagement. And what this does is allow you to actually monitor social networks for feedback about you or your company or things like that. I'm not sure how many of you have ever done it, but I've actually at times gotten better customer service by tweeting about something related to one of the vendors I work with than actually calling the 800 number, strictly because they monitor it a little bit more frequently, or more with more energy, I guess. And so what this does is allow you to actually pull comments or whatever out of a variety of different social networks, such as Facebook and Twitter and things like that. But what it will do is it will actually gauge sentiment. So it will actually determine in the language that it was written in. So it doesn't convert it. It actually checks in that language, and it supports a double handful or so. It says, okay, this is a good comment or a bad comment. And then what it lets you do is actually take action on that, such as create a case within Dynamics 365 to actually track that you're actually working with this person to resolve whatever issue you had. Like I mentioned with like one of my phone companies one time, I made some kind of comment. And I was like, oh, well, give us your, hey, we want us to call you. We can do that right now. So that was, several minute turnaround. The next module is something that is brand new called Relationship Sales. What this is a bundle between the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, we'll talk about a little bit later, and the sales module from Dynamics 365. So if you didn't know that, Microsoft bought LinkedIn a couple years ago, year and a half ago, wherever it was. And part of that is they actually have this thing called Sales Navigator, which is an add-on on top of LinkedIn that you pay for that gives you much better access to things and additional tools that you can use to work with LinkedIn and the data that you could see as a subscriber. So what they're doing here is they're actually combining those two things into a singular platform that allows us to actually use both products together. Like I said, we'll talk about that there in a little bit. So here's some primary features. Now again, there's lots of stuff to this product. I've been working with it. Last week was my 12th anniversary. So back in 2005, went to this meeting with, as a partner meeting Microsoft was put on, and they gave us this thing called a compact disc. Has anybody ever seen a compact disc? If you haven't, there's a couple of museums around the world that have these silver-looking things with writing on one side and these swirly things on the other side. That's how we used to install software back in the day, for those of you who've never seen one. So I got version 3.0, fresh off the presses, still warm from the burner, and that started me on a journey that's lasted me 12 years, and which is why we're talking today. So lots and lots of things have changed, and so this is just some of the kind of highlights that I want to kind of go through for this. So they have been putting a lot of effort over the past few years into making Dynamics 365 run anywhere. Most people access it via the website, but it also works from within Outlook, whichever version you're using. It also works within mobile and tablet, so the mobile interfaces. The mobile interfaces also have offline capabilities because not everybody can work connected 100% of the time. So they put a lot of energy in the past couple of years of making our offline story as good or almost as good as our online story. So it's a very good sync engine, and it works pretty well. So the interface is fairly streamlined. Again, it's changed over time. I'm going to show you a couple different variations that they're working on. We're headed toward a singular interface, what they call the unified interface. You'll see that on a slide or two here in a few minutes. And so the idea is when you open the product, depending on how you've have your settings set up or your administrator, the first thing you're going to see is some kind of dashboard in all likelihood. So as you can see, we have visualizations, which are charts. We have lists of stuff to do, information that we're working on, whatever it might be. Again, this is all customizable. We have guided processes. So the green bar at the top is what we call a business process flow. So this is something that you create to help your users follow a documented process within your business. This one happens to be on a lead. What does it take for me to get from a lead to a genuine customer who's going to buy something from us? Well, in this case, it looks like we have to qualify them, we develop the opportunity, we propose, and finally we close. Those are the steps that my organization has defined within this. Here's a slightly different variation of that. This is the new unified interface. As you can see, things are a little bit prettier, a little bit more color, and we have some new features. So this is actually a preview right now called the Sales Hub that you can access if you have version 9. This will be the new interface, probably the next release, which should be the spring. I think it'll be probably 9.1 is probably what it is. 9.0 is what it ships right now. So as things go along, we're going to get, again, a singular interface everywhere throughout the product, and the features and functionality will be on par everywhere, no matter what type of footprint you're working with, either mobile or not. A couple of cool analytics things that we have for us are relationship analytics, which allows us to actually use some of the Azure machine learning to determine if we are working with a customer in maybe the way we should have or should be. And what this allows us to do is just quickly see, do we have a responsibility to talk to a customer to make sure that deals don't go off the rails and things like that. So this is all linked together with other things within the system. And again, this is all some of the goodness from the Azure machine learning. We also have something coming right now. It's in private preview called Customer Insights. So this is taking it to 11, if you guys actually know what that means. So this is using, again, the Azure Analytics to take a look at your information within the system, to give predictive information, to give scoring information and segmentation about the data within your system that you're working with, based on some analysis points that they've defined. So what this is for is, again, to give you information. Am I spending time with the right kind of people to make this lead turn into a customer? Because depending on the size of your organization and how things are actually laid out, as far as processes go, you could be working with leads that, you spend a lot of time on, they never amount to much. Well, this lets you figure out, am I spending my time appropriately to actually garner new business? And again, all this is based off of Azure Analytics, etc. Okay. So the real shining point of all of these things is the the integration with other things. So back in the day when I started, and a bunch of us probably started, all we did was CRM. Okay, you put data into it. Sometimes you pull data out into Excel or whatever, and then that was it. But that's no longer the world we live in. We connect to everything now, and that's a big part of how we like to do things. So if you take a look at it from just the Dynamics 365 standpoint, this is the kind of things that you work with. So this is all encompassing both operations and sales. When you add in Office 365, you get additional stuff. And then finally, when you add in solutions from the industry, you get even more. So as you can see, everything is connected, and that's how we like to do stuff. So one of the big things here about kind of the newer functionality that adds everything, kind of the bells and whistles behind the scenes is the Azure Analytics. So we have machine learning, advanced analytics to produce charts and things like that, and do analysis such as streaming analytics would be one of those things. Internet of Things, if you guys are into any of that would be interesting to hear about. And so the idea here is what we're doing is a lot of the heavy lifting is now done inside of the Azure stack, and the results are just pushed back into Dynamics. And that's great because it allows us to keep innovating on the platform, but the Azure team to do all the real work behind the scenes, and all we nearly need is just to consume the results. So that's really good for us. Another thing that we have available to us is the fact that we actually have an entire platform. So we can, sorry, I'm working on one screen today, and I am all over the place. Sorry about that. So if you look at it at the Dynamics from a platform, which it is, because business applications platform is really what they call it internally at Microsoft. We can measure, act, and automate using Power BI, which we'll talk about in a second, Power Apps, and then Microsoft Flow. So Power BI is something that really and truly ties all of your data together, because nothing gives you information like an infographic or a chart. So here is just a sample that came off the Power BI website. I saw some stuff that one of the Microsoft guys did last week that absolutely blew my socks off, and I don't get excited about anything. I mean, I've been around a long time, and I've seen what I think is everything. And every now and then somebody will show me something I didn't think you could actually do. And it was just absolutely amazing. And it was all done with real data. In some cases, it was actually live data that he was doing from a customer, and just the power that you have available to you inside of Power BI, either using it standalone or integrating it directly with Dynamics, is very, very large. We have Power Apps, which is our solution for what they call codeless development. So there's a term floating around now called citizen developer, which is kind of a misnomer. You're not really going to be doing that kind of thing, but you have the ability to create an application that will run on just about any platform without writing a line of code. This is really cool for mobile, where you really need to create something that's very simple. It's just a data entry application that pushes data back into an online data source, and you can do it very, very quickly and easily with a Power App. Microsoft Flow connects a lot of things to a lot of things. There are almost 200 different connectors, of both internal to Microsoft, such as Outlook or Office 365 or SharePoint or whatever it might be, and then everything in between. So they support everything from Dynamics to Salesforce to Dropbox, and you name it. Just whoever has come up with different things to connect to their service is what you'll find. So this allows us to move data into and out of the Dynamics platform depending on your need. So here is another kind of view of bringing flow in. So this kind of goes back to the earlier graphic that I showed you. So everything is connected, and using Microsoft Flow, we can actually pull the data out of one place, do some kind of testing or checking on it, massage it, put it into another place, and have that happen automatically. One I did recently was I wanted to know when somebody sent me a specific type of email. So what I did is created a flow, looked at the email. If it contained a certain subject, I shoved it out to a notification for the Flow app that runs on my phone, so that it would pop up and say, hey, you got this email. It took me about 30 minutes to figure it all out, but that is something that I didn't have prior to that. So can I see a show of hands? How many people actually use LinkedIn for selling purposes? Anybody? A few of you? Okay. So if you don't use LinkedIn for selling, I'm wondering if you're missing the boat on some things, to be quite honest. So LinkedIn, I know a lot of people just like, oh, well, I use that for, for looking people up or to connecting with people to do business and stuff like that, but you can do much more. So we have a solution that you can install inside of CRM to give you access to data about a specific group of people, which is a company, or specific people. It ties into different locations within Dynamics 365, such as with leads or contacts, accounts, opportunities, things like that, so you can find out more information about that. When you have it installed, you kind of have to, this is a bit to set up because you have to have your CRM system and your corporate network all connected, because it's going to use your current LinkedIn stuff. What we can do is you can actually synchronize InMail, which is the email system of LinkedIn, with Dynamics 365. So what happens is it actually shows up inside of the platform. This is not a very good screenshot because it's kind of funky there, but anyway. So the idea here is what are we doing with this person? Do we have anything that's coming from LinkedIn? Can we use LinkedIn to actually integrate better with our data in there? There are a couple of different third-party tools that are free. One of them is Insights by Inside View. That's a data collection type of thing. Then they have Versium Predict, which is another free thing that you can use. And then finally, the LinkedIn integration, which goes with your LinkedIn subscription. Now, what's interesting about it, like I mentioned earlier, you have this thing called Sales Navigator, which is something that LinkedIn sells. It's kind of a pricey point, quite honestly. The last time I checked, and I don't know if this is what the retail is, but it was about $1,000 a seat. And like I said, the relationship sales package includes both the CRM license or the Dynamics 365 license and the LinkedIn Sales Navigator license, if not mistaken. So if you're exploring any of this stuff at all and you're thinking about using Dynamics 365 or you already are using Dynamics 365, then talk to your Microsoft rep about putting those two things together and see if you can get a little bit better price. But anyway, the point of this is LinkedIn has integration with Microsoft. Again, they're still a separate company. They're very, very specific about their data. You just can't go in and rip data out of LinkedIn. It has to be on a specific basis, strictly because of privacy rules and stuff that they've established with their customer, which is us. But we do have tighter integration. There's more integration coming in the subsequent version here that should be shipping in the spring. We'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, so this is something to take a look at. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of the product. I mean, I can sit up here for about 4 days and show you all the things that this thing does. The biggest thing that you need to do is just take a look at it and then just kind of decide how you want it to work. So first question you have to ask yourself is, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay, don't solve all the problems at once. If you solve all the problems at once, 1, you're an idiot. Sorry, you are. 2, you're stupid. And then 3, you're insane. And I'm not sure which one of those it is. And the reason I say that is because I have seen people try to solve all the problems at once, and it turned into a fiasco that generally ends in what we call a resume update event. Does anybody know what a resume update event is? Nobody? Okay. That's where human resources walks you out the door and says, you have fun. We're going to be working without you from here on. That's what that is. Okay. So again, find a problem to solve and solve that one problem. So we have sales issues. Our pipeline sucks. We need to get more pipeline. We need to do our sales process better. That's a sales thing. After you fix that problem, you can move on to, hey, our customer service could really use an overhaul. Let's tackle that. And again, do a little bit of time. I have, I sound kind of harsh when I say it. I have seen multi-million-dollar ventures absolutely explode because people didn't ask the right questions at the right time because they didn't know how, and that's not their fault. Okay, but I have seen several multi-million-dollar jobs just disintegrate because basically what they wanted at the beginning wasn't what they wanted at the end, and they didn't know that till they got to the end. Okay. Okay. Ken says you lost audio. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. Great. Ken, I guess it's just you. Sorry about that. Okay, iterative development. How many people actually know what iterative development is? Anybody? A few of you? Okay. Who can give me an example of one of the best iterative development processes in the history of humans? Nobody? So back in the 60s, we sent a man to the moon. Actually, we sent 2 men to the moon. That, Steve Hart says the light bulb. Nope, that wasn't it. That was a good one, though. Not the best one. Okay, I think anyway, but I'm biased. Okay, so what does it take to put a person on the moon? Well, the first thing they did is they sent a person into space. Then they sent a person into space and made it go around the planet. Then they sent 2 people into space. Then they sent 2 people into space in 2 different spaceships and made them meet without crashing into each other and shake hands. Okay? Then they sent 2 people around the moon and back safely. And then finally they put 2 people on the moon and then got them back safely. That took 10 years. But the idea here is they just didn't try to go to the moon because they had never been into space. So what they did is they developed a plan for, we're going to the moon. John F. Kennedy set the stage saying this is what we're going to do. And they did that. And so it took them 10 years almost to do that. And the thing was, it was successful because they did lots of practice. Okay, and as they learned stuff, they incorporated it into the process. So Dynamics is tailor made for this, and I've been doing this for years. Again, you don't start everywhere. You start one place, do one thing, add one thing, and do that. So like I said, start off with sales. That's probably the easiest in some cases. Or right now, quite honestly, there's a lot of customer service stuff going on that I've been seeing lately. So start off with one thing, add new things to it, learn from what you're doing, incorporate that knowledge in there, and then do the next one, and do that over and over and over again. So there are a couple different times I had contracts that lasted for a couple years strictly because of that. Okay. So implementation plan, take small steps. Again, don't try to do everything at once. Solve real problems. How do you solve real problems? Who can tell me, either in the chat window or otherwise, who can tell me how you solve a real problem? Anybody? Nobody? The way you solve a real problem is you ask a real person. That's how you solve a real problem. Okay? So you solve problems by talking to your users, your community. Okay, what are the things that you see are the problem? Or if you are the IT folks and you're talking to the business, what business things, if you think about it, it takes intelligence to run a business. I'm not talking about smarts. I'm talking about the way the business is functioning and things like that. So from a management standpoint, what data do you need to successfully run this business that you are not getting? Okay, that is a question to a real person. Say, well, I need this kind of information, and this is what I needed. Okay, great. Let's work on finding out how we get that to you. Okay, so talking to people about their expectations, what they feel that they can contribute to the situation, what they feel that they want out of it. Okay, so they put things in, they get things out, they work with it in the middle. Always remember that. Okay. Very seldom do you throw things into the system and it just magically comes out the other end. Somebody has to do something with it. Okay, so that could be you, it could be the system itself, some automated process you have. But the idea here is you work with real problems defined and clearly defined. Cannot emphasize that enough. Clearly defined, and then you solve those problems. Okay, the biggest thing you will run up against is user adoption. The way that you keep users part of the system and keep them on board with what you're trying to do is to keep them involved. Get them involved at the very beginning, seek their input, utilize their input. Okay, I cannot tell you enough. If you don't do what people suggest you do, and it makes business sense, then you're going to have a kind of a riot on your hand. Okay. Anything on that? Any questions at all so far? If not, we'll be done shortly. So let's talk about configuration. So it's kind of interesting. I actually got into an almost not quite a fight over this one time with the customer. It was kind of funny, except for everybody in the room that wasn't us. The difference between the words configuration and customization. In many packages, when you say customize, you're actually writing code to do something. Some packages don't react well to that when it comes to upgrades. Some people customize their system, and then when they go to upgrade, they can't upgrade because they've actually rewritten modules that were supplied to them by the vendor. And it just makes for just a really bad time. So you need to be very clear what you're talking about. Most of the things that Dynamics 365 lets you configure can be done without writing a single line of code. You can create new entities, which are database tables, new fields to either those tables or to existing tables. You can do all the things with the user interface, charts, lay out the grids, the views, the forms. All these things can be done without ever actually writing code. By the time you get to writing code, you've done a lot of work. That's the idea, or should be the idea. So again, once you figure out what you're doing, you need to make the Dynamics platform your own. Create the entities that make sense to create. Utilize what's there that already for what it was designed to do. There's a phrase we call repurposing, which is you rename or reuse one entity for another. That used to be the case many, many years ago. We really don't have to do that anymore because limitations that we were faced with at the very beginning or in the middle are no longer exist. So create new database tables, add fields where appropriate, show data to users that's relevant to how they use it. That can be the views, which are the grids. It can be forms for data entry. It could be charts and dashboards, what they call visualizations. Could be a Power BI, whatever it is. Show it to the user in the way it makes sense to them. Finally, the extensibility that we have. Again, we talked about Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. We've talked about different things that we can do non-programmatically with those two things. When it comes down to actual writing code, we can modify the user interface of the application using JavaScript, and then behind the scenes we can write business platform logic using .NET applications and everything in between. So next steps. If you don't have Dynamics 365, you go out to trials.dynamics.com. You can actually spin up a new one, either blank or with one of the variations there that they have. We have a public roadmap that will show you what's been done, what's in development, etc. At roadmap.dynamics.com. Do lots and lots of research, okay? I get questions from people all the time, and the other day I actually used let me Google that for you in vain, because the person just, he would have done the same thing if they just typed it in. Okay, there's lots and lots of good information out there. When I started, there wasn't. I wrote my blog, and how I became an MVP is because I was sharing information I learned because there weren't enough people doing that. Now there are hundreds of people doing that, and that makes the world a better place for all of us. Join the CRM users group. Okay, there are chapters all over the world. So that's a really good way to share information between different people, things you've seen, things you've run into, problems you're having. You can commiserate with people that are just like you. Okay, so the idea is you're sharing your knowledge with the other users, and that's great. Okay, so that is my spiel for the day. What questions do you guys have? Ken asks, says, good summary, did I make these slides? Yes, I grabbed them from a different sets of presentations and wrote what was there. No questions? I can't believe that. Debbie asks, how do I feel about the app for Outlook? So the app for Outlook, if you don't know what that is, we actually have two Outlook apps. One is called the Outlook Client. It's got a big long name, but Outlook Client is what the short name is. That's a physical piece of software that you install onto your workstation. So there's an add-in for Outlook. It installs, it communicates with Dynamics 365, and that thing has actually been put on the deprecation list, so the next major release is probably going to go away. The substitute that they have been driving to for the past few years is what they call the app for Outlook. The app for Outlook is actually an application that fits into Office 365 or Exchange. There's no software to technically install on Workstation. Once you install it on the user's mailbox, it's available through all of the Outlook clients, from the desktop app Outlook to OA, or Outlook Web Access, and also the mobile client. So right now, it is not feature parity with the Outlook client, which gets us into trouble, because it almost looks like it is, or what we found out through a couple partners I found out recently is it does things almost the way that you would expect, but then it stops and doesn't do it. Okay, so it's they've got an update coming here soonish. I don't know when. Doug asks, what would you recommend for backing up CRM data in case of user error? Well, Doug, backing up doesn't matter. Restoration is the problem. How are you going to restore it? Okay. So several different ways. There's actually an article about how to back it up to Azure SQL storage. That's one way. There's a process for that. My friend Daniel at Kingsway Soft has a an SSIS connector that will allow you to pull data out of pretty much any kind of CRM you can think of and stick it into somewhere else that you want. Usually SQL based of some kind. That's a good option. Scribe has a package. So one of those things that you come up with is going to do it. But again, backup is totally irrelevant. It's restoration that is the key. How are you going to restore it? The problem with CRM or Dynamics 365 is it's horribly normalized. You can't restore one record or a set of records without restoring ginormous chunks of the database, strictly because they're all related. So pretty much it would be a maintenance nightmare. Okay, so really be careful when you try to do something like that and try to think it through with people who are, quite honestly, much smarter than me. Let's see. Shh, sorry, cat. Let's see here. Hugh asks, will the Outlook app eventually have a twins indicator that shows Outlook mail that have been tracked in 365? Hugh, I thought that was the case. Maybe not. So he's talking about in the Outlook client, the icon changes so you can tell if the email's been tracked. I haven't actually looked at that lately, quite honestly. John asked about when I'm posting slides. I actually don't post the slides. I'll put the recording up on YouTube. It's how I do that. Eddie asked, will the Outlook app still use the Dynamics email router? The email router's been deprecated. I think it's already deprecated. It uses server-side sync. That is a requirement. Yeah, he said that the Outlook app does not automatically track the emails coming to the inbox that are emails in response to emails already linked to Dynamics 365. That is, Hugh, the problem that this partner that I know found. So what he's talking about is with the Outlook client, once you start a conversation, it will automatically track, and actually with CRM itself, it'll automatically track the responses back and forth. Well, the Outlook app does not do that. So when you get a response back, you have to manually track that response as well. So I think that is a known design issue, and I think they're working on that. So I ask, what's your opinion on the recommendation using Web API instead of the CRM org service? If you're talking about .NET, the assemblies are the way to go because it's just faster to do development. If you're talking about JavaScript, Web API. Jessica asked, how do you customize all of Dynamics 365? Can't seem to find solutions. Business Edition. Business Edition doesn't allow you to do that. In fact, Business Edition they put on hold, so it's going to be redone. So I think if you're looking at it, that may be a waste of time at this point. I'm not really sure. Can't ask, have there been any advancements in the archiving, purging of data? Not that I have seen. I mean, dude, that's been on the roadmap for about 100 years, but I know a few companies have attempted it, but nothing else. John asked, for Power Apps, you have to purchase one individually. No, there's no purchasing of Power Apps. Power Apps is a development tool. So you develop it, it creates a package, it's a zip file. You download that zip file to the thing that runs it on whatever device you're on, and that works. You're being licensed to create those things. Is what the deal is. Should I ask if there's any idea when Learning Path is coming to 365 on premise? I have no clue about that. Tom asks, is service activities deprecated? I haven't seen anything on that, Tom, but quite honestly, if you go out to there's a search for an article about Dynamics 365, what's new or something. There's a list of deprecations. I did not see that on there. They're getting rid of the service Scholar? No, that's not it. Something inside services are getting rid of, but not the activities themselves, I don't think. Let's see. Subarasu says how to start learning 365 for operations for a non-finance guy. Unfortunately, I am not an operations person, that's an entire package for itself, and that's just a bunch of work. I don't really have a good idea of where to start with that, because it's a full blown accounting package. I just don't know it. Scott asked, did they offer a trial to pre-test a migration from on-prem 2016 to online? Yeah, you can do that. You can spin a trial up. That doesn't hurt anything. You got 30 days. Says a dev has confessed that nothing will work correctly if we migrate. Maybe your dev did bad things. That's why it wouldn't work. Most things will work just fine, but you're going to have to test it. There's really no substitute for that. Okay. Lisa, do you still want to ask a question? Let me unmute you. Okay, Lisa, you can go ask a question.
No, I think I raised my hand in error, but thank you.
Okay. Ken asks, any experience with the marketing module? No, I haven't actually. I've seen it. They released a ton of videos this week on YouTube about marketing for Dynamics 365. I haven't even looked at them because I'm not really sure what they're selling, to be quite honest. If anybody else has, let me know. John asks, what tool would you recommend for data migration? Again, Kingsway Soft has a SIS connector, and then Scribe has one, and then then you can roll your own after that. So it depends on your level of comfort with different aspects and also your price point. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Daniel Kai says that the marketing video has been redacted. Well, Daniel, what I saw, because I'm on the subscribe to their channel like I do mine, I saw 3 or 4 posted, which I didn't really understand because my understanding of the software wasn't supposed to be out till next spring. So I don't have any idea what's going on with that. Justin says, any update on the multi-select field? Actually, yes. Our friend Andre has actually added a thing to his workflow package that allows you to populate a multi-select option set via workflow. So that's great.